You can swivel it a little more if you want. Certified podcast.
Certified Wrench podcast. And he's got guys on there. I mean, he's interviewed guys from Australia, guys from Canada, guys from Europe, people from all over the U.S., and working on all kinds of stuff too. Like I said, like heavy equipment, ag, heavy truck. Some guys are even specialized like oil field stuff, like drill rigs and whatnot, cranes, all kinds of cool stuff. And then he's interviewed a lot of owner operators like me too. Some guys that are real big or, decently sized out west that deal a lot with like the gold mines and shit. So it's pretty cool to listen to.
So how long has he been doing it?
Yeah, I looked there. His first post was beginning of 22, January of 22. And yeah, he's up to almost 7,000 followers. So it really took off for him.
That's what I'm hoping.
Dude, if it's podcasts or like you see them for everything now, and a lot of people, instead of music, it seems like most people listen to podcasts to get through their day.
Right, yeah. One thing I usually do, though, I only listen to, I actually watch them on YouTube instead of...
And I think he started doing that, too, because, like, ours, it was just, voices. There wasn't anything, like, when I did it. But I think...
he didn't do video?
Not in the beginning, no.
Is
just
it now?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
He was limited on... like he'll do specials and stuff and do videos of ones, and then he'll still do some audio. I guess it depends because obviously like the ones like there were a couple of them that were local to him down in Texas where they could, come in and, he set up in his studio and set up cameras. But if you're still doing like remote interviews from guys overseas or guys just, across the country, then not much of a video there. Because I think what was it? I think me and him were on TeamViewer because I remember seeing him. It was either TeamViewer or FaceTime because we could see each other talking. It's like a FaceTime instead of just, being on the phone. That way, like, we could anticipate,
right?
When someone's about to talk or done speaking, this, that, and the other. So it made it flow a little bit better. But as far as for trying to upload that, I think the quality would probably suck. I think he did like... was it on the page? He randomly like went live, and he went live. He like sent us all invites, if I remember right. And I think there were a number of people that have been on the podcast that kind of popped up into this live feed, like a group chat, and kind of just winged it from there and just talked about stuff. But that was pretty cool.
Yeah, pretty much everything. It's going to be a wide range of people.
Yeah.
I mean,
is it just going to be
it's not one certain...
Like life stories or just accomplishments or hobbies?
How everybody started, I think. And just go from there.
Yeah. Well, and, it might turn into like a certain path. I mean, obviously you'll probably see it too. Like, when you start posting like these variety of different episodes, obviously the ones that are going to draw the most attention will get the most views and listens.
Yeah. There's enough guys there's like 400 and some of us in the driving group. So.
Oh, really? The group that you're in?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that. I thought it was like more of like a more tight knit, like you guys are all.
We're tight knit, yeah.
Right. 400 people.
400 and some, yeah.
Is it just strictly Corvettes?
No, everything.
It's just all muscle?
No, just anything.
Okay. I didn't know if it was like just strictly American muscle, because people mix that up.
No, there's Ferraris and Porsches and Audis and Lamborghini.
And this is just in Fort Wayne? Or this is kind of like an Indiana thing?
Fort Wayne Driving Club.
Oh, really? Where do they have meetups at like country clubs or something? Like, what do they do?
No, we usually every month we'll go somewhere.
Mm.
Then sometimes spur of the moment we'll just meet up and go cruise.
Do they have like a page, like a Facebook page or something that someone will make a post or it reaches everyone?
I think that's private though.
Right. Yeah, it's members only.
Yeah.
But that's because I was thinking, like, how do you get in touch with everyone? It's like you almost have to do that because a group chat, like a text message, wouldn't really work for that many people.
The last 2 years that we went to the Tail of the Dragon.
That's in Tennessee, right?
Yeah, who's all going? Made a group chat like Facebook Messenger. But
what do they do with that? Is it just kind of a free for all as far as for like people staying down there, or is it just like they'll call a hotel and they get like a block rate or something like, hey, we've got X amount of people coming
when we come down there? Well, the last time I think we almost had the whole hotel to ourselves.
Right. Well,
I think there was 120 of us or something.
And so obviously, is it like an association, like you pay like some dues or something, or is there like a guy that runs it or a manager?
The guy, he was like 2 grades ahead of me in high school.
Okay.
He's the one that started it. I think it was like 2020.
Yeah. So it's not something I'm thinking here, like you see like country clubs or these other things, like, they'll have like a group vote on who they want, like the, manager to be and stuff like that. People make it as political as you want to, or it can just be as simple as like, nah, he's cool, he can do it.
Right. No, it's, I think it's him and a few other guys that run the Facebook page and everything so everybody's not posting all kinds of stuff. But.
Right. And there's some pages like that too. Even like for like what I do, like heavy equipment pages, like field mechanic pages. And it's so oversaturated. Like there's so many, there's people from, not only the US, but Canada, and then, from overseas and whatnot. And at first, when I first joined them, it was cool, but it's so massive and it's so unregulated that I feel like a lot of the times you get on there's not really a sense of community to it because it just seems like everyone's just dragging each other. Someone will make a post and someone will make fun of them just because they spelled something wrong, or, if they asked a stupid question, which I will admit there's some people that get on those pages and post some stupid stuff or ask some stupid questions. It's like common sense, but I like
something that I would ask.
Well,
I have no idea what's going on with.
Well, that's different though, because this is what you do.
Right.
This is what you do for a living, and these people are, kind of asking like really general, like diagnostic kind of advice, They'll be like, hey, it's almost like they want like a free diagnostics on there. It'd be like, hey, this machine's doing this, got this code. What do I do next? It's like, check fuses, maybe. I don't know. Do the basics. Does it have fuel? Does it have oil? You get stupid people like that are just looking for, a free ride and tell them what's wrong. They just think that page is just.
They're not actually mechanics. They're just trying to fix their stuff.
I think that there's some of that too. I think some of it's mechanics. And then I think some of it is just people like that, that owner operators that got like their own equipment doing dirt work and stuff. And they just get on there. And I feel like they make that post like just trying to get a free diagnosis. But that's one thing that I wish those pages had, is that it was a little bit more tight knit and a little bit more regulated. And where like your group, for instance, you don't have people going on there just posting flack or doing dumb stuff. Like it's actually like constructive and cool stuff. They get together and do cool things and stuff like that. Yeah, those other pages, like what I'm talking about for what I do, they're cool and all, but it just turns into a big drama fest. I've considered just leaving all of them because that's all it ever is. Here and there, you'll see some cool stuff, or someone will kind of give some.
Did you start at O'Neill?
No. So what I did, I guess we'll just start from the beginning. So right out of high school, I just worked a simple retail job, Gator Mountain. I don't even know if I was there a year, but I wanted to get into a shop to start because I knew I wanted to be a mechanic. It was hard to get into all the equipment dealers at that age, especially since I had no college background, and I was trying, like, I know Cat has like the Think Big program. It's like an
You have to
apprenticeship.
go over to Ohio to that place.
For Cat, no, Cat does their own like in-house stuff. Really, all the equipment dealers and even the truck dealers and stuff too. And same with the car dealers. You can go to like a university like UNO or UTI
Right.
over in Illinois, and you can go through their diesel technician program, which they'll split it up. There's like highway based, equipment based, agricultural based, performance. They split it all up, and you take whatever fits you best or whatever you want to do. And then you can come back and apply at the dealerships or just local shops and get hired. I didn't have any of that. I looked into it, but of course, fresh out of high school, 18 years old, just had a kid.
Agricultural fit under so there's field, and then there's like what would
you're saying like what I do?
Yeah, what
there's field
that them both sort of fit under.
There's a field mechanic for each one. Like there's field guys that'll go out and work on trucks on the side of the road, or in truck stops, whatever the case, or go to farmers, places. Same thing with agriculture. They'll have guys that work in the shop, and then guys that go out in trucks and work on tractors and combines and all that stuff. All that field is, they'll go out and go to those farmers' places and work on them. And the same thing for heavy equipment. You've got your shop guys, and then you got your field guys. And that's the college thing. Like I'm not going to sit here and say that it doesn't
go.
I didn't go.
Yeah.
No. And I'm not going to sit here and dog the people that did go, because they probably, they went and did that, and they got a lot more opportunities than I probably did, and probably had an easier kind of,
foot in the door.
Easier foot in the door, and probably a little bit easier transition, like, moving up, because they had that. But I will say on the flip side, so like my first job that I got into, it was just at a local car dealership. And of course, no college degree. I just showed up with basic tools and willingness to learn. And they started me on the lube rack. So I was just changing oil, rotating tires, doing inspections, basic stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I started doing that, and, obviously wanted to learn more, do more. They started letting me do brakes. And then they kind of got to a point they're like, hey, we're going to put you under a master tech, which a master tech, that's on the automotive side. They've, depending on, what is that?
Wasn't there a few different steps at Rudd?
Yeah, there's tiers before you got to master tech, and that follows with any of the dealerships. There's different levels and tiers before you get to master tech, but master tech is like the top dog. But yeah, they put me under a master tech at that car dealer, and he basically kind of threw me in the water. He'd start having me, do electrical diagnostics, doing engine diagnostics. I started doing, the heavier work, like I was doing engines, transmissions, suspension work. Then he taught me alignments, because he ran the alignment rack. And then when he was gone, I was, 19, 20 years old, and I'd be running the alignment rack because there was no one else there that knew how to run the alignment rack. But I didn't want to stay with automotive, just because, one, it's not really what I was passionate about. I wanted to work on heavy equipment. And two, they do the whole flat rate pay. And that, if you're really good at what you do and you got a good gig and you got a place that can feed you a lot of work, you can make a great living, fantastic living. Like, you can make killer money. Because I've talked to guys that stayed with it. And when you get seniority and you stay in places like that, and you get to the master tech level, and it's a popular dealer where they have a huge, clientele, and there's just a bunch of work coming in. Yeah, I mean, guys can clear six figures just working on simple cars every year, and I mean, they're making good money.
Like the mechanics in Fort Wayne.
Yeah,
like
yeah, like at a
Kelly's or something.
yeah, like the local Toyota dealer. I think they say like local Toyota dealer, Master Tech, I think might peak or top out at pay like I think anywhere from 42, 45 bucks an hour or something like that. Which
they're probably maybe 10 hours a day.
Oh, they could do more than that. So I don't know. Have you ever experienced flat rate and how like that works? So basically, like if you will use like a big PM service, like a 100K service, you're going in, you're changing all fluids, all filters, spark plugs, doing alignment, all that stuff. The package deal, every place is different. Those places, they're big services, and those services will pay, oh gosh, you could pay 10, 12 hours for just that service. But if a guy has done them,
and get it done, and
some guys can knock them out in a few hours because they just got it down to a science because they've done so many. Well, if you knock it out in 3 hours, you're still getting paid for 12 or whatever it looks at. But on the flip side of that, like I was talking about, if you got a good gig somewhere where you're fed a lot of work, they got good clientele. If you're somewhere where you have minimal seniority, they're not really selling a lot of cars, there's not a lot of service work coming in, you can really get screwed because you go to work and do your 9 to 5, you show up, and if you don't have a lick of work, guess what? You didn't make anything that day. You just sat for 8, 9 hours and spent the fuel, and you didn't make nothing. Why? Because there was no work.
But probably in Fort Wayne, there's enough work to everybody's doing pretty good.
Yeah. I mean, so that's the other thing that kind of worried me too about automotive. So, automotive is obviously the main civilians, people, everyone has one, everyone and their mother. But the thing is, like, a lot of people neglect their vehicles, which some could say is a good thing because cars are always breaking. There's always work to be done. But on the flip side of that, people don't know how to take care of them. People don't want to spend a lot of money to take care of them. And just with, the current climate now and, people, it's tough times for a lot of people with kids and just the cost of living and whatnot, that they're really not inclined to spend money. They don't want to do that, service, even though they should. They're just going to, kind of keep riding it along. And it also it'll fluctuate too based on the seasons. Like, I remember when I was there, like around the holidays, no one's going and spending money on their cars. Everyone's taking all the money, saving all they can because they're buying gifts for their kids and family and stuff like that. So like around the holidays, it can really dry up. And then same thing, like tax time, when everyone gets like their tax checks back, it'll be, it'll just be a wave of people coming in. Oh, well, hey, now I want to finally get this done and fix this or get this stuff done. And so it's kind of feast or famine. It kind of varies. But if you get into a good spot, a good dealer, you get some good seniority, you've been there a while, you've got respect among like all the service writers, and you do good work and you're fast and you're accurate, you can make a damn good living. But yeah, like if you're, and that's kind of the downside is, if you're a fresh guy and you show up, to a new dealer and you're flat rate, if there's a bunch of senior guys that are already there, I mean, the service writers, the dealer, that whole service operation, they're going to favor those guys more because they've been there the longest. They do the best work. They know them.
Right.
They know they're going to get good work out of them. So for starting out going somewhere, it's going to be slim pickings for a little bit. You're going to get the warranty work, the oil changes and stuff like that, where it just doesn't pay much. And that's one of the other things that sucks about flat rate too is, so, and this is more popular on the automotive side, is they'll have, warranty claims and stuff. And the manufacturer will actually, like service bulletins, recalls, stuff that you get letters in the mail for. So they'll, obviously the dealer will be notified, hey, recall XYZ is coming out. This is what you need to do. This is the update. They'll give you a service bulletin on what you need, what kit, what parts, what you need to do, walk you through, have instructions and everything. And they typically have a book time that they want you to complete that stuff.
A certain rate.
Right. And
that they'll pay.
Yeah. And that's a kicker too, is like, not only that, like they'll have these super involved. Like I remember the one dealer I was at, they had a really bad issue on their V6s where the porcelain on the spark plugs would break and it'd score the cylinder walls and they'd consume oil. Well, in the beginning, they just were doing long blocks, just whole engines, just swap them out and get them done, get back on the road. Well, it got costly. So then the manufacturer came back and said, hey, we're just going to start doing short blocks now, and then just, swap over the heads and all that stuff, all the stuff on the outside and, swap it over and put it back together. So then we started doing that. Still expensive. So then manufacturing came back again and said, hey, you know what? How about you just pull the pan and check and see which cylinders are scored, and whichever ones are scored, pull the rods and the pistons out, see if you can hone it out. We'll put a new piston and put a new rod in, put new bearings and stuff. That's just shady as hell.
Yeah.
Well, the whole goal of it, and, I knew what they were doing. They're just buying themselves time. Towards the end there, when they were doing that, it was, hey, it was basically get it to stop consuming oil until they're out of warranty. And once they're out of the warranty, then, we'll sell them a long block all day because, hey, we're making money on the gig. But yeah, that's the main reason I wanted to get out of automotive, was flat rate and that whole atmosphere.
That's never really known.
Yeah. And that's the difference with equipment. Equipment typically is not flat rate, just because everything's so much larger, everything's so much more complex. There's a lot more moving parts. Everything's heavier.
Some certain stuff's hourly, and then some might just be depending on the job.
Yeah. So like what I do now, I mean, pretty much it's I charge by the hour. It takes what it takes, and everything's different, because it's different if I worked for like an equipment dealer where, you just worked on one brand, which I did, but even then, one brand makes such a wide array of equipment. You've got your wheel loaders, your excavators, pavers, skid steers, the list goes on and on.
Mm.
And it's hard for you to get specialized in one when there's so many to cover. It takes years. And even then, there's like 20, 30-year vets that are out there who've been working at, CAT or any of the other main dealers, and they still don't know it all because there's just so much material. And plus that, and the equipment keeps changing every time. Every new series that comes out, the electric is different. The hydraulics has been updated. Everything's been moved around. So everything you go on to work on is basically a new experience, even if it is working for a dealer for a specific brand.
Hmm.
Yeah, because it's all based on age, size, type of machine. Then you get into the whole emissions stuff too. If it's pre-emissions, is it new emissions? What tier of emissions, and what's the horsepower range? Does it run DEF? Does it not? There's so many different variables.
Sounds like a lot.
It is. But yeah, so that's why I went equipment is, it's hourly based. I don't know of any equipment dealer that's flat rate, and I don't know if they'd really hang on to any guys if they did flat rate. Now, like I'll have customers reach out now for a certain project, like swapping an engine, like which I'm doing right now. Swapping a bad engine out of a cement mixer and swapping a good one out of a donor one into it. And they're like, hey, can you just send us like a ballpark estimate what you think it's going to be? Because, I've never done one in a mixer before, but swapping an engine is swapping an engine. It's just, I've never done it on a cement mixer, right. Which granted, I will say it's not really that bad since I got the engine in the rear and the hood comes out of the way and everything's nice and easy to get to. It's not recessed down the frame or anything. Like it's not under a cab. It's real nice actually to do, but yeah, so I'll do that. I'll make up an estimate and be like, hey, this is how many hours, this is what I think I'm going to have in materials, parts, based on what you're doing. And from there, you go on from there. They can say yay or nay. And of course, it's an estimate,
Right.
which means I'm not fixed at that price. Like this is what I think, but that's prone to change. I mean, if it's less, it's less. I'll charge you less. And maybe I, overshot. It didn't take that long. It went really quick. Then, obviously you pay less. But then there's times where, hey, I first time doing this, we ran into some issues, some roadblocks, bolts seized, couldn't get them out, took forever, parts weren't right, stuff like that.
That happens a lot.
Oh yeah. That's the other kind of the difficult part of it too is, how I was just talking about, there's all these different series and variables of all this different equipment and brands. And, when you go to order a part, obviously they want serial number. And so, you give them serial number and, they look up specific on their part system on what it is. You tell them what it is or point on a little screen. Oh, it's that, that number. They'll order it. And then it's a matter of, is the part system correct on the part number? Is the person that's pulling it off the shelf pulling the right thing? Is it mislabeled? Or if you're talking on the phone to someone and giving them the benefit of the doubt, are they ordering you the right thing? Dude, half the battle, it's like, you sit there, machine's down, you wait for parts to show up, and then you finally get it. And it's like, it's wrong. Back to the drawing board.
Another day.
And which that sucks too, especially like when I'm busy and I'm trying to schedule, like if someone just says, hey, my excavator has a bad alternator or it's not charging. You might look at it, go out, diagnose bad alternator. Call the dealer and I say, hey, give them the serial number and I order this alternator. And they're like, oh, okay, it'll be in 2 days. So I'm like, okay, 2 days AM. So I'll move my schedule around and I'll be like, okay, hey, I will be back in 2 days. I'll pick up the alternator on the way here and we'll put it on, we'll get you back up and running. And they're like, okay, cool. Sounds like a plan. Of course, then that situation comes, it's the wrong alternator, or better yet, you take it all the way out to the job that's an hour away and it's not the right stuff. And then you got to call the customer.
Place, I don't know, like Napa or something like that that you can, or
for some stuff.
Somewhere online like Rock Auto that does like car stuff, but for heavy equipment. So you're the one actually looking at it and ordering it.
And there are some places like that, but they're very few compared to like the automotive world. Automotive and like heavy truck, there's a lot more of that stuff, but equipment, not so much. Just like what I was talking about, there's such Frankenstein machines, each brand. Yeah, they kind of do their own funky stuff on making things work. There's general things that you can do. Like I've gotten guys get creative over the years, like your simple stuff like I was just talking about. Obviously, batteries are universal. Alternators are pretty much universal. They're made by a handful of companies, and depending on what the demands are of the electrical system, whether it's 12 volt or 24 volt, however many amps it needs to, it's not like Cat's out making their own proprietary like alternators or starters. They just get them from Delco Remy or whatever company it is and slap them on. So yeah, your starters, your alternators, your batteries, obviously some fuel lines, airlines, stuff like that. You can source, generically, like from local vendors and stuff. There's some stuff that crosses over. That's a nice thing, like on heavy trucks. So they've all got a straight frame. You've got all your different brands. But all those platforms, they all have like, it's either a Cummins nowadays with missions. I think the only three that are still doing it is Cummins, Detroit, and Volvo. Those are the only 3 engine platforms that I'm aware of. I guess there might be some other oddball Mercedes ones and stuff.
PACCAR.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, PACCAR, which that's a version of Peterbilt and Kenworth. But yeah, PACCAR. I'm glad you said that.
Yeah.
So yeah, you've got a handful of platforms for engines. Same thing, transmissions. It's either, Eaton or Allison.
Right.
And then when it comes down to suspension components, it's all, they all use the same stuff too.
Hendrickson.
Yeah,
That's
Hendrickson.
crazy that
Yeah,
there's right there in Kendallville,
Yeah, Hendrickson, Dana, Arvin Meritor.
We've got a lot of stuff around us that make a lot of stuff.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And then Bendix, like brake components and stuff, all that stuff. It's just literally like a truck. The only thing that makes it like a Peterbilt or a Kenworth or a Volvo or an International or a Mack, it's the body and the electrical.
Yeah.
Pretty much, otherwise it's pretty much the same frame, same axles, same transmissions, engine platforms. So that's nice for the heavy truck world because there's so many like outside vendors outside of, like your main manufacturer dealers where you can go get brake chambers, airbags, axles, differentials, clutches, transmissions, whatever. Mm-hmm. Plus, it's such a huge industry too, because that's what keeps the world moving and what keeps this country moving is just all the heavy trucks. Yeah, heavy equipment is a totally different realm though, as far as for aftermarket. And as time goes on, more places are popping up like that, especially with like undercarriage, like on your excavators and your dozers and stuff. There's a few aftermarket companies that will sell, undercarriage packages, track chains, track pads, sprockets, rollers, all that good stuff, idlers, and you can put an aftermarket undercarriage on them. And then same thing with some of the hard parts too, pumps, rollers. Cylinders. Yeah. Yeah. So it's starting to take off. You're starting to see a few more of those places like that sell aftermarket.
So it's aftermarket, but
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then there's a lot of salvage places too for equipment. You see those boneyards.
Yeah.
Older machinery.
Auction places, a bunch of them.
Yeah. Yeah. Some of them will part them out. You can buy engines, pumps, and all that stuff. Like, I had a customer that had a bad engine in a skid loader, and it was basically a loss. The amount of money it would take to rebuild the engine was worth more than what the skid loader was worth. And it was a cat skid loader, of course. And I remember I had gone in and I was just kind of shooting the shit with the guys in parts at Cat, talking about it. And they said, well, they're like, what's he planning on doing with it? And I was like, oh, I don't know. I'm like trading it in. Probably he needs something. And they said, well, if he does bring it here, he's like, we buy those. Like we don't care if it's running or not, because Cat actually has like their own specific entity that'll buy those blown up machines and literally part them out.
They just want them parts.
Yeah, they want the parts. They're like, we don't care. We'll take it. We'll part it out.
They can make money off the parts.
Oh yeah. Because that's the thing too is, I will say there are some similarities on the heavy equipment side. Engines, they're kind of their own thing. Like, Caterpillar makes some of their platform. They make some of its, Perkins and Mitsubishis, and it's kind of changed over the years. Now I think some of the newer ones, they're even utilizing Kubota to make some of their smaller engine platforms.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and just paint them yellow and put a cat sticker on it, mark it up. Paying for the name.
What, one of their skid loaders and stuff?
Kubota? Yeah.
Their skid loaders now are made by Kubota?
Just the engines.
Right.
Yeah, just engines, yeah. Some of the newer ones, it's supposed to be, they work out some sort of contract deal, and Kubota will make their engines, send them down the line, same line as the regular Kubotas, but instead of Kubota green, they're cat yellow, and they just get sent to them. But Kubota makes a good engine though, so I'm not complaining about that whatsoever. That was probably a good call on their part because they've kind of cat skid loaders in there. Their engines in those cat skid loaders haven't been very good, so it's probably a change for the better. But you get into that. So like on the hydraulic side, when we use a skid loader, for example, the pumps and the drive motors and stuff that, and the cylinders and whatnot that make the boom go up and down and in and out, and drive motors that run the tracks or the wheels and the pumps that drive them. Those Cat does do some proprietary stuff and has some of their pumps that they make in-house that is their stuff. Mm-hmm. But there's other times where they use other companies, like Sauer Danfoss is a big one a global company makes hydraulic components across the board.
They're over in VMware.
Yep, yeah. Sauer Danfoss, Rex Roth. Oh gosh, there's a bunch of other ones, and they'll make simple gear pumps, fixed displacement gear pumps. They'll make big load sensing pumps. There's a place up north too that is like more industrial based, but they're a dealer for like these common, these names that I just mentioned. These are big hydraulic companies, they're global. And I mean, they make pumps and motors for all kinds of stuff, whether it's a combine, a skid loader, or it could be like a big, press or a shredder used in a factory. It's all the same stuff. It just depends on the application. So you can get away with that stuff sometimes if you dig and you have an issue. And I've done that. You get like an older piece of equipment, like a really older piece of equipment, and say the dealer doesn't really support it anymore. Parts are scarce. The support is limited, plain and simple, from the dealer. And, obviously you got to fix the machine. You can do a little digging and find out who the actual manufacturer of that pump or that component was, and get a hold of that actual manufacturer.
And they're probably still making it.
Yeah, or they'll have a cross or something like, hey, we kind of discontinued that. We don't do that anymore. But
or something.
Yeah, but we do use it still in this model. So what we'll do is we'll pull that piece off this newer model, and just send you that, and it should work. If you get some good parts guys, that's the other thing too, is having good, knowledgeable parts people that know that kind of stuff.
Know where to find them.
Yeah, those people aren't sitting at an Advanced Auto or a Napa or something like that. Those guys have been doing it a long time.
So after the car dealership, then you went to
Bobcat. I went to a Bobcat dealer, local one. I was there a little over 3 years. That was my first taste of equipment. And we're kind of jumping back, but kind of like the point I was making earlier about guys who went to college. Every dealer has their own factory training, and they send you to these courses, these schools, and they're kind of scattered all over the place. Some of them are at actual universities. Some have their own. Like Cat has their own school, big over in Illinois to HQ. I mean, that's one of them. And they've got them spread all over the place, but they've got their own teachers, their own curriculum, everything, and they'll come in and they teach you specific on their brand of stuff. And every dealer's like that. And Bobcat had their own. And of course, that was part of what we talked about earlier, the different tiers of levels of techs, all based on your training, what you can do, what you're knowledgeable of. So they send you to those. There's some online stuff you take. They're kind of like the entry level to get into the course. That's basically like, hey, this is a little tidbit of what we're going to go over. This is a sample test. Let's see if you can understand this and this and you pass this, then we'll send you the actual training, the hands-on training. So you had your online stuff that you did. And once you passed all that, then you got signed up for the courses, and then you got sent to those courses, which was in person, hands-on, and you went more in depth, and they split it up, like 1 week would be hydraulics. Next one would be electrical. Next one would be diesel engines. And it would also cover like the emission systems too. And each one of those categories had levels too. There's level 1 through 3 or 4 or whatever it is. Doesn't matter, however they want to break it up, of just electrical. And same with hydraulics, same with diesel engines and all that. And so, you would go to those, and then, you obviously had a test at the end. And then if you passed, you got a certificate and come back. And then also it has to be maintained by the dealer too. They have to have X amount of technicians that have, a certain amount of certifications. If they don't, they aren't able to perform warranty repairs. Like the manufacturer can actually bump them back. Like, hey, like you tried to make a warranty claim on this machine for this and needed an engine, but none of your guys are certified in tier 4 final engines in this engine platform. So how can we take your diagnosis as credible when no one's been trained on it? So they can bump that stuff back. So that's kind of like the motivation,
right?
To where
they need to have the higher tier guys.
Yeah, and that's a big thing too. So like if you stay somewhere and you put your time in and you get all those certifications, not only does it make you more valuable, the company and the dealer in itself is a little less inclined, or I shouldn't say that. They really don't want to see you leave because they've invested a ton of time and money into you, essentially, because most of the time you're paid. You go, they send you over, they give you, X amount of per diem a day to go eat, and they pay for your hotel, and you're paid for the week on top of that. You pay for the course, and then usually they pay for your fuel or pay you mileage. So yeah, it's an expense, which I will say that beats the hell out of going to college and having it all out of pocket, because you're learning the same material that you do at college,
and you're learning what you're there for. You're not learning other stuff that has nothing to do with.
Yeah, like you go into like a community college, they make you take underwater basket weaving because it's a minimum requirement in order for you to get an associate's. Yeah, stupid shit like that. Yeah, you need to take theater and a separate language, and hey, maybe take up a little gardening, because it's just you got to have that to get an associate's. Yeah, that's what I like about it. You didn't have all that extra BS. Mm-hmm. You went there
and you're paying for it,
right? And that's the thing is, that's how they got you too. It's like, well, it's required, and you have to pay for it out of pocket, whether you're doing it with student loans or you're actually paying right now to do it. The books and everything else, everything you had to pay for. So yeah, no, I feel like I got lucky, really lucky. Now, granted, I kind of had a harder start, but I still ended up, once you get in and you start learning, you've got some experience under your belt. At least in my line of work, experience speaks a lot more than education. Hands-on stuff, because, well, we're working with our hands. You can read all you want about pouring concrete, but until you've poured concrete, you're no good at it. So it's just like that. Any hands-on kind of trade, experience speaks a lot more than education.
Yep.
But yeah, so I will say, it was when I was still at the automotive place, and there were other places after that too. But the best one was when I was in automotive. So when I was going under that master tech, they had me train a new guy to take my spot on the lube rack. Like I said, basic stuff, changing oil, all that stuff. Kid starts, and we're about the same age, we're both kids. And I kind of show him the ropes, and we got to talking. He was fresh out of a 2-year tech school program. $40,000-$50,000 in debt. And he started in the same spot that I did, with just having a couple grand in tools and a Craftsman toolbox and just showing up wanting to learn. Mm-hmm. So that right there is kind of like, man, I think I'd rather just kind of go the way I went instead of doing that. Sure, you had fun. Sure, it was a blast. Everyone has a good time at college. You learn a lot, but
yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. I hear stories. But
I barely made it through high school, so.
Oh yeah, I mean, I was no honor roll student. I wasn't on the principal's list or whatever they call it, dean's list or any of that shit. Couldn't wait to get out of there and actually do something I wanted to do. Like we were talking about earlier with the college degree. While it was useful, the English language, the history, the foreign language, the arts and crafts and all that bullshit. Like I was just kind of over it. I was just like, this isn't fun to me anymore. Well, it never was really fun or interesting. It's just something you had to do. And I was ready to go do something that I wanted to do and potentially make money doing it. So, but yeah.
Then after Bobcat?
After Bobcat, I went on to an excavating company local excavating company. And that place had some, they were established. They had quite a crew of people, and they had a lot of heavy equipment. They were predominantly Cat, so that was kind of my taste of Caterpillar and learning that stuff. And did a lot of welding and fabrication, but I did like
You knew somebody there to get in the door?
No,
that they were hiring, and
I just saw that they were hiring. All of my jobs that I applied for were literally a shot in the dark. Like I didn't have like, hey, like so and so works there, you should put an app in. Like I was a stranger everywhere I went. I just saw that there was help wanted, or they were looking to hire mechanics, and I put an app in, and the rest is history. But yeah, no, I've now that we're talking about it now, because that's common. You get a good buddy that's
usually all mine I've usually known I've
right
had a foot in already.
Yeah, and that's I'm not. Honestly, I wish I did have those, because some of the places I worked sucked. And if I had someone that already worked there and they're like, no, man, no, just
don't do it.
Yeah, just find somewhere else. But no, yeah, they were all just shots in the dark. And so I worked for that company for a short stint. And then I left there and went to another excavating company. And there I was, I was there about a year and a half or so. And they had a mixed bag of tricks as far as for equipment. It was, there's multiple brands of stuff, Cat, John Deere, Volvo, some oddball stuff, but that was nice too. Because then it kind of built my confidence in working on everything of all brands, all colors. And he had some agriculture stuff too, because he farmed. So I worked on a little bit of combines and tractors, and worked on some heavy trucks and dump trucks and low boys. And we worked on everything. I mean, if it was a chainsaw all the way up to, a big $750,000 excavator or a combine, we worked on it. And that was kind of cool, because it was new every day. And there were even some times where we didn't wrench, and they're like, hey, we just, we kind of need someone to run a truck. Or, hey, we need you to go run around, move equipment for us, move a skid loader or something here, go take it from one site to the other. And that even there was a time too where I went and picked up seed and went out and helped the owner load up the planter so he could go, plant the fields and stuff. So I liked that. I really liked working for the excavating companies, because it was new. So it was always exciting. It was different. Things changed. You weren't just always working, turning wrenches, doing diagnostics. And there was a lot of welding and fabrication and stuff too, which was really fun. It kept it interesting. Whereas you go to a dealer, I mean, that's all you do. That's what you're there for. That is your specific task, and they compensate you well. Places do compensate you well. And like I said, they send you to training. So, you are really good at what you do, as long as you, absorb the material and want to do good. But it kind of gets tasteless after a while, because you're doing the same stuff repetitively, in a sense.
Oil changes.
Yeah. Well, it kind of depends. They'll kind of have, it's like a lot more of the seasoned guys that are like real savvy with like electrical emissions and hydraulics, just complex issues. They're just gifted. They can, diagnose those issues. They like it. They enjoy it. They're efficient at it, and they're accurate. A lot of times, once the dealers kind of know what you're good at, that's what they stick you with, which it's an efficiency thing. And I get it. Why, if this guy's, we're paying him this much and he's this good and it's a complex issue, why would we send Joe Blow that's green and absolutely hates diagnosing electrical work or hydraulics or whatever the case? Joe Blow would rather do services. Well, then that's what they do. Joe Blow goes and does the PMs, and me or someone, or someone like I was just talking about goes and does, the more complex stuff. And it is fun and interesting. For a while it's challenging, but there's some issues that are complex and they're so intermittent, it just has you banging your head against a wall. you're kind of chasing your tail on, trying to diagnose it, and you start questioning yourself. And am I really diagnosing this right? Am I missing something? And yeah, it kind of you can get burnt out easily, constantly dealing with that stuff. And to be honest, working at a dealer, that's a lot of what it is, because a lot of these excavating companies or quarries or farmers, trucking companies, whatever the case, they'll hire people to do the simple stuff. I mean, anyone can change oil, anyone can change out a hose, change out an alternator, battery, starter, whatever the case, light bulb. The only time they really call the dealers or someone that's knowledgeable is when there's a serious issue. It's either they don't have the knowledge or they don't have the equipment to do it.
A lot of stuff now with cars and stuff, you just pretty much plug the computer and
yeah,
and that's tell you exactly what it is.
Yeah, well,
for cars and stuff.
Even then, you got to be careful with that, because there's guys that are like that they'll go out, they'll plug into it, and they see a code, and they're like, that's the problem. And, they just throw the part at it. No, you can't do that. What it does, the code, they try to split them up and, do different descriptions and different tiers of, levels of severity and stuff like that, to kind of narrow down the direction that you need to go. And then, every brand has troubleshooting stuff kind of to walk you through. Like if you punch in on their system, their service system, whatever diagnostic code it is, it'll explain the code, basically, why it occurred, what is potentially wrong, and how to fix it. And there'll be a troubleshooting tree that'll say, if it's an electrical issue, they'll be like, hey, get out your multimeter, put your leads at terminal 3 and terminal 7, see how many ohms of resistance you got. And if it's within this realm, then that circuit's good. Move on to the next step. If it's not, then you need a relay or whatever the case. It's, so they've got stuff like that. But that stuff isn't always available for everything. You get the oddball stuff that isn't a main dealer brand, or you get the older stuff that's just not really supported anymore, and there's not really a lot of literature for it. You're kind of pioneering it. You're kind of just using your head and your experience and just your knowledge of how circuits and hydraulics and engines and everything works. And it's kind of just from experience, just realizing, what to check to see what the issue is. Like a good example, I had a customer called that older cat excavator, and shut it off after he's done loading a truck, went back, wouldn't start. And I'm like, okay. And, he's talking to me on the phone. He's like, what are you thinking? He's like, is there anything simple I can check? And I said, when you're cranking it over, is it smoking? Is there smoke coming out of the stack? And he's like, no, nothing. I'm like, well, then it's probably a fuel issue. We know that. And I said, since it's not smoking at all, it's probably an electrical issue, because the shutoff solenoid on your governor and your injection pump, it's not energizing. So it's not giving any fuel to your rack. That's why you're not smoking. So I said, it's probably an electrical issue. You probably just had a wire or something come loose, or a fuse. I said, check all your fuses, check all your relays, and go back to the injection pump and make sure the wires are on. And he went and checked all that stuff, come back and said, yeah, everything's fine. I don't know what's wrong. I need you to come out. And so I went out there, and I've never worked on this specific excavator before. I don't know the ins and outs of how it's wired and how it works. But just with my experience and knowledge, I'm like, well, it's going to be pretty darn simple. So I just kind of dug into it and traced the wires, followed them back. And I knew, kind of did a little poking and prodding. And I know that, those fuel shutoff solenoids are momentary. And it's kind of like an exciter wire on a starter. So followed it back. Sure enough, there was a broken terminal on the exciter terminal on the starter that went right up to the fuel shutoff solenoid. So fixed the term.
Frayed or something, or
just old and brittle. Old and brittle, just broke. I grabbed it and it just broke right off. So it had high resistance. So It was I cut back the wire until you got to good stuff and put a new terminal on and started right up and away you went. But yeah, like some people or others would hear that situation and think if it's a newer one, oh well, let's go, we got to go plug the computer in, it'll tell us what's wrong. Not necessarily all the time. And I feel like a lot of times when you're going out on issues, you get into these newer complex machines and everyone wants to hook the laptop to it. And you'll get on there and you'll see all these faults and you don't know what direction to go because, depending on the issue, if it's like a big electrical issue, you might have like 10 faults. And, the normal way is like, oh, well, you just go to each one, plug in the code, troubleshoot it, and, go through the whole process that, it has for the troubleshooting aspect to figure out what the issue is. Well, you can kind of read between the lines there. Instead of doing that, which for 10 codes could take all day or a couple days, if you look at all those codes and say they all say short to ground, short to power, they have a similarity, even though they might be different systems and for different components, they have something in common. Well, like I said, short to power, short to ground means we've got a power or a ground supply issue. And I'll see all of those and I'll go and look in the schematic of that machine, if it's available. And turns out I'll look and, well, guess what? There's a sub harness. And even though all these components are different and do different things, they're all on that sub harness that's supplied by, this ground and this power. So I'll go find that power, that ground.
Yeah. And more than likely, that's the ground.
Yeah, and there's the issue. Whereas if you just, like we were saying, if you just hook a computer to it and you see the codes and you just want to follow through and, troubleshoot them, all of them, you're going to be there for a day or two, reading, going, checking, adjusting. Just, you're going to hate yourself by the end of it. And you probably will figure out what the issue is. It's just going to take significantly longer.
Right.
But yeah, and that's one of the things that's kind of, I say that, the guys that do that because I've been that guy. I've done that. You go out and you try to diagnose each one. And finally, just over time, it kind of hits you. You back up and think for a second.
You just need to slow down.
And just think, you got to keep things simple. The whole KISS, keep it simple, stupid. There's been so many times where you go down the rabbit hole, you see faults, you see all these issues, and there's so many different directions that your brain wants to take you on diagnostics. Turns out it's a bad fuel filter, it's a blown fuse or a loose connection. It's always something stupid simple. Mm-hmm. Like there's a lot of people too. We've had guys, I said it earlier, there's like parts hangers. Mm-hmm. And guys will go out and they'll hook to machines for these issues and like, well, that needs that valve, it needs that actuator, it needs, whatever. And the worst one is the guys that, I remember a guy in particular, I've never seen someone throw ECUs in equipment so much. Just, ECU's bad.
That's the computer?
Yeah, computer. Which cars, everything nowadays, I mean, you can pretty much guarantee any car, vehicle, truck, piece of equipment probably has about 8 to 10 computers on it now, all controlling different things. Like even just like, my pickup outside, just for you to go over and hit the window button, just to bring the window down. It's going through a control unit, even though it's something as simple as putting the window down. Goes through an ECU.
So then after that one with the farmer and the excavating and stuff, after that,
that's when I went to the Volvo dealer. Mm-hmm. And that was, I went dealer to private contractor and back to dealer. And that was the Volvo heavy equipment dealer. And kind of the same thing. Like I said, they sent me off to training. They had their own in-house training, went through their stuff, their version again, which is nice. It's like a refresher on your hydraulics, electrical engines, stuff like that, drivetrain, whatnot. And it's nice too going through because you learn other tricks that, other places didn't teach you. And while I was at that Volvo dealer, there was a lot of well-seasoned guys with that company that were at training or involved with training. And one of them today is a really good friend, turned into a really good friend. And he was like a mentor for me while I was there. And he was involved at training, and he'd worked there. What was it? I think he was there almost 30 years. And he started just the same as like me, just like he just got in the shop, young kid, and just got to work and started learning stuff and worked his way up and went through all the training, became a master tech, and then ended up getting into training, itself, getting a training department and started helping teach people, teach other technicians on what to do. And so I went there, they went through all that, and I learned that heavy equipment line. And then also in addition to that, that company kind of supported a few different brands. Like they had Volvo Construction, they had Hitachi, they had Link Belt cranes, some of the older stuff too, like Clark, Michigan, Sandvik drills,
pavers. What kind of pavers?
They were
pavers.
Blawnox, yeah. IR, that was the other thing. IR, Blawnox, pavers, and then which I think, if I remember right,
mill machines for the asphalt too.
I don't think they did. There weren't any mill machines. Like I think Wertgen and like some other ones like that, the big milling machines.
I don't mess with them.
No. Where Dustin works now, they're a dealer. They're a dealer for that stuff, and he deals with that now, the big milling machines and different paver stuff and all that and whatnot. But yeah, we did have pavers. They were Volvo pavers, and I think if I remember correctly, so you had IR Blawnox, which I think IR purchased Blawnox pavers, and then if I remember right, Volvo purchased Blawnox from IR. So Blawnox, the company that made the pavers, was Blawnox, then it was bought by IR, then it was bought by Volvo, and they basically, kind of like what Cat does, they'll just throw their brand on it, throw their name on it, throw their engine platforms, and they'll throw some engineering involved in it too, and stuff like that. It just depends. And then I think since, if I remember correctly, Volvo sold that paving aspect of all the pavers. I can't remember the company that bought them, but yeah, they basically.
But they're green now, aren't they?
No, that's
them.
No, that's a different company. Is that Vogela?
That sounds about right.
I think it's Vogela. I think that's what it is. Those green ones. I think that's what they are. And that's that Komatsu dealer in town, like where Dustin works. That's where I'm pretty sure they're a Vogela dealer, because he went to a bunch of training for the pavers. And he really took off with it. Like he really, really good at it, which Dustin's really good at everything. As far as I'm sure that's good. If he listens to this, that's really going to stroke his ego, but he is good. He's very sharp. And he just
good at about everything.
Yeah. He's just good at everything. He's a good guy. But yeah, he did really good with pavers. They sent him to training, and he really absorbed all of it. And that was just at the Volvo dealer. And then he went on to the Komatsu dealer. And, obviously they found out about that. And, he started working with Vogela pavers. And now I'm pretty sure he's like the guy there. Like he is he's the paver guy. So like any of the issues with any of the big paving companies going, like he goes.
Or even any of the really, really, really big stuff. He gets in on it.
Oh yeah. And I mean
I know
yeah, because he
last year, that really big haul truck.
Yeah, they've had some
that he put together.
Yep, he did that. He went and worked on like a pretty big Komatsu loader in a quarry on the west side of the state, and that was really fun, really cool. When I was at that Volvo dealer, because we dabbled in a bit of that. They had some bigger iron that was involved in the quarries and stuff, and that was really cool stuff to go work on. And there was one It was a quarry up near Toledo. I think it was in what's that little town called? Sylvania. Sylvania, Ohio. They had a quarry there. And it was an old Clark, or am I thinking right? No, it was a Clark, big haul truck, like big rigid frame hauler, like they use in the quarries and stuff. It needed some work done, and of course, that Volvo dealer that dealer I was at was still supported them, so they called us out, and I went and looked at it, quoted a bunch of work, and I've got pictures of it. That was a project. I was up there a couple months, but we brought in a big crane, tore the whole bed off, orchestrated all that, and the bed needed some line bore work. The rear struts for the rear axle needed work. The bull nose, which is how the rear axle attaches to the frame, the bushings and bearings were all bad.
What about there was and you guys go over and work at a place over there in Ohio that makes tanks?
I didn't.
Yeah.
I didn't. I know there. Yeah. No. Yeah, I didn't get to do that, but yeah. But I remember that was a really cool project, tearing in that big haul truck. Because, oh man, I'm trying to I pulled the radiator out of it because it was leaking at the caps and stuff, and I mean that radiator was probably the span of this room. Like it was like you had to. We brought like a flatbed to load it on, like a flatbed, like a 1-ton truck.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you laid down that radiator, it took up the whole flatbed, and because we sent it off to get it repaired. And yeah, everything was just big and massive, and it was really cool. It had like this big twin turbo V12 like Detroit engine in it. It was pretty sweet. Newer Detroit is 4-stroke. It wasn't one of the old 2-strokes lowers and whatnot. But yeah, that is one thing I really did like, was going to the quarries and working on the really big stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That was really cool. I like all equipment, from small to big, but working on the real big stuff, that got me excited. And still to this day, and if I got a call, from someone to go work on a big haul truck, big loader or something like that, I'd be like, oh heck yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because that dealer I was at before, I was talking about, I was working on that haul truck. They're big down in Kentucky and West Virginia and Pennsylvania, big into coal. I mean, that's what put that dealer on the map, was coal. And down there, I mean, they've got massive stuff. Southern part of the state, I mean, you've got huge electric drive haul trucks that are the size of commercial buildings. And huge engines, like the rear axle, you can walk around it, like inside of it, where the differential's at.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just massive. And if there was ever, it was more popular back then. By the time I got there, coal was kind of drying up, and it still kind of is, but they said it's starting to make a comeback down there. But it wasn't like what it was, like 10, 15 years prior to me being there.
In the 90s.
Yeah, 90s, early 2000s and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It was booming down there. And I would have loved to, because that's what they would do. They would kind of sub us out, like say, it wouldn't even be so much that we were slow, but if there were other dealers in the dealer network that were, behind schedule or were shorthanded, they would basically call and they'd send one of us down to work remote for that dealer to help get them caught up. And whenever they asked me to do that, I always said, yeah, because one, I was single at the time. Well, no, I wasn't single. Me and her were dating. But it was still just really cool because we weren't living together. And I just really like traveling and going and seeing these different places and working on the equipment. Because that deal was the first time I got in like a big service truck. They paid for me to get my CDL, so I was just super tech when I got into that service truck. I was ready to
big crane.
Yeah, big crane, big toys. I was just ready to drive across the country and work on big shit.
Mm-hmm.
So I would always go whenever they asked me, and I was hoping one of the times they would ask me to go down to like West Virginia or Kentucky or Pennsylvania and get to work on like some of the big coal stuff, some of the big shovels or drag lines or any of that stuff down there. But
pretty crazy.
Didn't happen.
So then after that, then that's when
Yep.
you were even sort of starting your own.
Yep. So
in that.
At that point, I was thinking about doing my own thing, doing my own gig. And I kind of looked into it, did a lot of reading online because I'm not a businessman. I don't know anyone that owned a business. No one close. You know, most of them are all customers from me working at places. And so I kind of just spent a couple months, did a lot of reading on what I had to do, and got on this website. It's called LegalZoom, and anyone can go on there. And if you want to set up like an LLC or any company, however it's set up, that place or that site will tell you, like, walk you through it. You'll read, and you click on something, they'll tell you, oh well, you can do this. They'll explain it. So that's how I created my LLC. And I did this right beginning of 2020. And that was right when COVID hit and the world was ending and, everyone was freaking out. Yeah. Martial law and everything else was happening. So, so I was thinking about doing it and I'm like, well, maybe I better hold off because shit was going wild. And so all of 2020, I didn't end up doing anything, which that was also a tough year too, because that's when my brother ended up passing away. And so then I got moved in, I bought a house, got moved in at the house. She had moved in with me, was still at that dealer. And from even before I started my LLC, I was always looking for service trucks, the big trucks like we're talking about. Always looking at them on, truck paper and stuff, seeing what they go for and thinking like, man, could I swing that? And I ended up, it was early 2021. I was kind of getting fed up where I was at. I wasn't happy. Kind of wanted to do something different. And I was thinking about like, maybe what if I went and did something on my own? But I was just kind of coming up dry on trucks that were in my price range that would work. So, and
I'm sure just going out on your own, scary enough.
Oh yeah. I was scared shitless. I was, stupid and brave at the same time. So what ended up happening was I found a truck that I liked and the price I thought was fair, and I called, and it was over in Ohio. And they said, hey, well, we got someone coming to look at it. We'll let you know how it goes. Well, it's sold. So they called me and told me, which was nice of them because most places don't even call you back. And I said, it's no big deal, whatever, not meant to be. Because at that point, I wasn't serious about doing it. I was just kind of wanted to go look at it, see what it was all about, and was thinking about it. They said, we sold that, but we got another truck coming. And they said it's a nicer truck, it's bigger, it's Kenworth. It'll be, ready here in a bit. And I said, well, the one that I was looking at was a Ford. I'm like, well, there's a reason I was looking at Fords. I said, I love Kenworths, love Peterbilts, but I can't really afford them.
Right.
They go for significantly more.
You're talking six figures.
Oh, yeah.
Easy.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And he said, no, he's like, I agree. He's like, you're right. They do. He said, but this one is, it's $10,000 more, which, yeah, that's $10,000 a lot of money. So I was like, oh, okay, well. And he's like, but it's a lot nicer truck. It's got a lot more going on. I was like, send me pictures. And he did. And I saw it. I was like, oh, all right. Got the background on it. Came from out west, Arizona. No rust. They came in, they freshened it up. They bed lined underneath, bed lined the bed, painted the inside of the body and outside. And it's just how it was spec'd, what it came with. So I said, hey, I want to go look at it or come look at it. And they said, yeah, it's fine. They said, hey, we got someone else that also wants to look at it too. They're like, technically we talked to you about it first and we want to honor that. But they said, would you mind putting a deposit down? So I had to put like a $2,000 deposit down just to go look at the damn thing. Because it was then people were buying trucks. You know, it was hard to get a service truck. It was a real competitive market. Like you had to be on it, and you were basically paying it what they were asking, or you weren't getting it because the next guy would pay the same.
Like how everything was really
still is. Yeah, pretty much. It's like, well, if you don't want to pay it, then someone else will. Sorry about you.
Yeah. You gotta be fast.
Yeah, do. And so I ended up going out and looking at it. And I remember when all that went down, I wanted to take some PTO just because I was just so burnt out where I was at. And so I wanted to go look at that truck and just take some time, just reset. And I put in for PTO at that job, and manager ended up coming back and be like, "Hey, I denied your PTO. You got to work." And I was like, "Oh, well." I unloaded my truck that night and turned it in. I'm like, well,
that
okay.
That
was kind of the last straw. I was like, well, you know what? I'm done. I'm like, well, you know, you said you didn't approve it, but I'm telling you, it's happening. Indefinitely.
I approved it.
Yeah, I approved it. It's happening definitely. Here's my truck. Here's my card and my phone.
And then that's when they start backpedaling. And
not really. No,
really?
At that point, no. They at the time, that manager, which he's not even there anymore. I think he was kind of checked out on the job too.
But he was still playing like he's the big man.
Yeah,
he was still playing big man.
Yeah, to a certain extent. You know, I mean, there was a lot of drama that kind of leads up to that. That's a story in itself. On why we got to that point and why tensions were so high at the end there. But yeah, I mean, I think he was checked out on where he was, just the stress of it. And yeah, me and him kind of weren't seeing eye to eye and not getting along at the time. So I don't know if he did it out of spite, if he did it to punish me, or if he was actually genuine and said like, no, like we actually have a bunch of work. We need you we can't have you take off.
Right.
But either way, I mean, I was checked out. I was done. So I turned my truck in and I ended up going.
Made the decision.
Well, that's the thing is like, I hadn't even made my decision to buy the truck yet. I was just like, you know what? Either way.
So you made the decision to say, I'm just going to go, I'm going to try it.
Right. I'm going to do something else. Whether it's me doing something for myself or working for someone else. Yeah. I'm checked out. So that's what I did. And I ended up going and looking at that truck and saw, you know, its shape and for what they were asking for it and how it was spec'd out. I was like, man, I got to try to get this truck. And the rest is history. I ended up getting it. And from that point on, it's when you buy that kind of a piece of equipment and that's that expensive,
you gotta get to work.
Yeah, you're in it, you know. Yeah. You're in it, and
it's time to get to work.
Yeah, time to figure it out and start trying to make money. Which that was the other part too, where some people would probably say I was an absolute idiot. A lot of times you'll see when guys will leave places like I did, leave dealers or wherever the place, the customers, if they build a good relationship with those customers, they do good work, the customers will follow them.
Mm-hmm.
They'll be like, I don't.
You could even get a hold of people that you were already doing stuff with.
Yeah.
Through that.
And that's
and they liked you.
Right. And I tried that a little bit, but I wasn't like, because when I first started, I didn't want to have like a bad rap, because the whole heavy equipment, excavating, earth moving community, it's like a community, like you're talking about, like with your car group.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone talks. And yeah, even though here in Fort Wayne, you know, it's the second largest city in the state, it ain't that big.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone knows everyone one way or another. And so I didn't want to go into it and steal a bunch of clientele from them, because then that kind of makes you look shady, you know, bad PR. Mm-hmm. Some people, you know, like obviously people who know the full story would be like, no, he just did a really good job and they just did him dirty. And when he left, the customers really liked him and wanted to do work for him.
Yeah.
But from the outside looking in, the story can get twisted around. And if someone wants to gossip and be like, no, no good son of a gun stole. He come in and undercut us and took our customers, and I just didn't want that.
Yeah. But it's one lonely guy against a company that's
right.
I mean,
yeah, and that's
you're really gonna get hurt over
right, and some of my
one
previous
little guy, you know.
right, and some of my previous employers, one of them in particular, I won't bring it up, like names or anything like that, but the owner was there was a situation where basically one of his customers knew me, of course, when I worked there, and was in a predicament, needed his equipment worked on. They couldn't get to him in time. He knew I had gone on my own, doing my own thing, started my own company, said, hey, so-and-so says they can't be out here until, end of the week. What can you do? And I'm like, I was like, I can be out there this afternoon. Give me 30 minutes. And he's like, all right, come on out. And I did that and worked on it. And word got back to my old employer, and they just started dogging me about like, well, he's floated jobs. He's, he hasn't been anywhere for a long period of time. And he's just,
people love to hate on people that they want to do the exact same thing that you did.
Yeah.
But they didn't have the balls to go do it.
Well, just like kind of shitting on the little guy, and that's what I kind of fired back when that customer had said, told me that. And I said, listen, dude.
If the customer likes you, it doesn't really matter what anybody else.
Right. And I was like, I said, here's something to think about, like that guy was dogging me and saying basically I was a nobody. And it's like, if I was a nobody and you're as established and, the biggest, baddest in the West, why is my name even in your mouth?
Yep.
If I'm a nobody? Obviously, if you feel inclined enough to dog me, you either feel intimidated or threatened by me. And I'm one guy and you're a dealer. So it's like, I kind of laughed and kind of took it as a compliment, kind of indirectly. It's like, wow, geez, he feels like I'm that big of a threat. I'm one guy. Like either I'm more badass than I think I am, or he's got a little bit more going on in the background that I'm not aware of, where he's a little bit more skittish about one guy coming in and, potentially taking a bunch of work from him. It's like, how thin are you spreading yourself where you're worried about one guy?
How'd you come up with the name then?
Oh, for the company?
Yeah.
I was just I thought about it for a while because I had been thinking about it for some time, and I didn't want to do. I'm not going to hate on anyone. You see a lot of companies nowadays. Usually, people use like their last name. So and so and sons, stuff like that. Nothing against that, but I didn't want to have my name involved. One, because my name is somewhat hard to pronounce correctly. It's
the way you look at it,
right?
The way I looked at the first time I looked at it, I didn't want to butcher it,
right? Yeah, and that's the thing is,
it's like it's sort of like my last name, sort of.
Right.
They say Schlatter or Schlatter.
Right. And that's what I was kind of like too. It's like, I don't really want people butchering it. Plus, I also didn't want to have a connection to it and have that kind of a personal, because for instance, say you get a bad egg of a customer that's just, one of those just terrible, rotten people that is just pissed off at the world, and they just want to go out and just throw your name in the dirt. And I didn't want them going out throwing my last name in the dirt, because there's other people that share that last name. I'd rather them, if they want to dog on Freedom Field Service, okay, Wade at Freedom Field Service. That they're not dogging on Bohde's Field Service, because then every other Bohde in town, if the word gets around to them, it's it's kind of an insult to them. And I was like, I don't really want to do that. And like I said, it's just kind of a different name to pronounce. And I wanted something that had a good jingle to it, I guess, something that, some guy, you see like long drawn out companies, it's a mouthful. You don't want that. You want something simple, something that someone remembered. But Freedom struck out, or, stood out to me because, one, it was, the patriotic aspect of it too. I do feel pretty blessed that I'm able to do what I do and start a company and start from scratch as just little old me and, chase the American dream. That's pretty cool. And the other part of it too is,
getting your own freedom.
Right. My own freedom. I'm free to work on whatever brand, whatever age. I'm not bound by the, kind of the dealership level stuff, and it's, I'm free to do it however, because there's different customers that you run into. There's some customers that are totally by the book. Like they want every service done meticulously, by the book, every time, change every fluid, change every filter. And then there's other like realistic places. They're like, hey, like, we change the oil, we change fuel filters. We do periodic maintenance, like yearly. We'll change the hydraulic.
If you see something, change it.
Right. We change it when it's an issue.
Right.
Some of them, and some of them are just, everyone's different. And then there's, the real lax guys are like, I change it when there's a problem.
Right.
Or like, oh, I can't remember the last time I did that. And everyone's got a different way of operating. And I get it. At the end of the day, it's all about making money. Some people are okay with spending that extra money to maintain their equipment. And some people are like, hey, like, we're trying to
save money.
Buy more equipment, more equipment, have more people, expand, whatever the case. People just don't want to dump as much money into it. And that's kind of the nice thing too, is when you go in and you're at a dealer, you're kind of limited on stuff that you can do based on like liability and whatnot. Because, well, for instance, we'll talk about the black sheep of today, the whole thing with emissions and deleting, the stuff you don't talk about,
Right.
So
like the other companies that you worked for, the bigger, ain't no way that stuff's going to happen.
No. But then there's other smaller companies that they're in a pinch, they're not these Fortune 500 companies that can just, that one's down, we'll just buy another one.
Oh, and some people don't even want to deal with this stuff.
Right. Yeah, because it is. I mean, it's more complex. It's more stuff to go wrong.
And when it goes wrong, it's expensive.
It can be expensive, and it can be a
big
yeah. And I'll admit, some brands are better than others. I will say, some people, and this is all opinions. There's probably some people that would smack me in the face for saying it, but I think the Cummins platform and their after treatment system, I think, is a step above the rest. Like I think they've really
on equipment or
both
big trucks.
Yeah, but both big trucks and
like newer, like in the last like maybe 4 years.
Right. Yeah, they're newer stuff. Yeah, when you go back
right at their beginning,
2010, 2012, everyone was struggling. No one. This was a new thing that got thrown on everyone's lap, and they're like, "Oh, what do we do?"
Yeah, because I drive a 13.
Yeah, and it's probably a temperamental son of a gun.
Yeah, it's got 560,000 on it.
Right. Well, you're at $500,000. I mean, that's pretty much
last summer. A lot of death.
Yeah. And that's the thing too, you have to kind of keep in mind is, $500,000 is about pretty much the predicted lifespan for like an on-highway engine.
And it's like for a scrap truck, I mean, that's even more where it's.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, those things are worked.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you want to test.
They're planning on getting the last 4 old ones out of the fleet. So.
Yeah. Yeah, you want to talk about putting a truck through its paces, or putting any piece of equipment through its paces. Put it in a scrapyard.
Mm-hmm.
That'll tell you if it's junk or not. It'll end up being part of the landscape and end up being shredded up for material.
Yeah.
For material. But yeah, I will say like Cummins, in my opinion, seems to have their stuff down. Other places, other manufacturers, not so much. There's still a lot of struggles, even today.
Mm-hmm.
even today, even though we're over 10 years into it,
Yeah.
or 12 years into it. Well, more than that, 14 years, because it started in 2010.
Yeah. Time flies.
Yeah. So, yeah. But what I was getting to as far as for, your different customers and whatnot, everyone's different. And what I was going to say is, like, for instance, with dealers, like if you go out and if you work on a machine or a truck or whatever, and it's been deleted or tampered with, the emission system, you throw your hands up. You can't touch it. Dealer doesn't want you to touch it because it opens up liability where they could actually lose their franchise or their dealership authority. And not only that, they'll blacklist that piece of equipment. They won't touch it again unless you return it back to its original state from factory. And in some cases, some dealers will blacklist the customer and just be like, no, we won't touch your stuff. We won't touch your stuff because you did that. It's getting to that point. And, I'm kind of playing, the middleman here. Like, I get it. Because there were a couple times where I was at the dealer where I went out on something.
Had to play by the book.
Had to play by the book. And I was like, guys, listen, like, I know why you did it. I get it. I'm not going to sit here and paint you out to be a criminal. But I said my hands are tied. And so I had to leave and look like a dick. Whereas now I don't have to do that. But I also have the ability to say no. Whereas previously, you got your papers. That's what you were going to do. If there is a job that I do not feel comfortable with, or a customer that I do not feel comfortable with, whatever the case, the situation, or maybe it's just, the job really isn't in my wheelhouse, or I don't necessarily have the time for it. I'm just like, hey, thank you for considering me, for wanting me to do this, but I can't at this time. Not with my schedule. I don't have the manpower, don't have the equipment, don't have the tooling, etc. So I'm a little bit more in control of my schedule and the stuff that I want to work on versus, hey, you're going to go out and you're going to do this electrical harness in this machine at a dairy farm or a landfill. Yeah, those are my real favorite, landfill. Yeah, that's a customer that would call and I'd be like, nah, I'm sorry.
That or the dairy farm.
Yeah.
I'll
take a dairy farm over a landfill. Yeah. I'll do that.
Yeah. You just got to smile instead of worrying about getting stuck with something.
Oh, I had a terrible experience at a landfill. And I don't even know if I want to talk about it because it's just so goddamn gross. But yeah, and I had no desire to go work on stuff there. Just nasty, gross, everything. Yeah. And that's the thing too, is like people are running over toilets and scrap cars. They throw everything in the landfill. I've seen videos. Guys will mow down a mobile home.
Yeah, I used to run roll off for trash company.
Yeah, and they'll just, I think I was up on a landfill working on a machine, and I see a truck going past me pulling an old mobile home, old single wide. What did you just back it up, unhook it, and then the big compactors just mowed it over, and whatever was in it, everything just got crushed down and put in the landfill.
Yeah.
And those machines, like, yeah, there's the nasty aspect, but then there's also like, dude, all the guarding and everything that you have to take off, because they build those things like tanks.
Yeah.
Because there's so much stuff. Right. Stuff coming up, puncturing an oil pan or transmission pan or, ripping a hose. It'd be hard for them, to ever keep the things running. That still happens.
And then the stuff's got, a bunch of gunk on each nut or bolt. Right.
Yeah, everything's gross. There's hundreds of bolts you got to take off one panel to get to one area. And then, of course, it's this small area that's always hot, and then all the little stuff just collects in there. Then you're digging out. It's terrible. I don't. Some guys love it, and they love it because no one else wants to do it. So they'll get in there like guys like me, or guys that work at dealers, like they'll get in there and they can get past it and they'll make a killing because no one else wants to do that work, and more power to them. But it's just that ain't for me. That's not what I want.
No.
But yeah, so yes, the whole Freedom Field Service thing, that's how I came up with the name, and that was my thought process on it and why I did it. And it all kind of worked out too with the truck and the colors and red truck, big blue welder, and a white crane,
and everything's been booming since then.
Yeah, I'm really fortunate, really thankful, because I know there's guys out there who do the same thing as me and struggle for a lot longer. And I lucked out big time and got some really good customers. Some are really big, some are smaller, like local. It's a good mix of both. And
yeah, you can't put all your eggs in one basket.
Yeah, and I did a bit of that. And one thing I will tell people about that is be cautious of it, definitely. Because you can get yourself in a bit of a pinch there if you spread yourself too thin, and if you're doing work for one customer and then all of a sudden they decide to go a different direction, you can get yourself in a lot of trouble.
Get slow,
right? Yeah, but at the same time, if one customer is wanting to throw all the work at you, and it's like, well, what are we here to do? We're here to make money and here to make a killing and do what we want to do in life. And I'm sorry if someone's going to say, hey, here's an open check, it's yours if you want it. How much do you want? You kind of put all your eggs in one basket, but if the sky is the limit and you can do all the work, it's like, well, why not get it while the going's good? And when it slows down, or if it runs out, it runs out. Don't be an idiot and spread yourself so thin that once it does dry up, then it's like, oh crap, like I don't have any other customers. I don't have any other work. What are we going to do? So yeah, I mean, there's a way to go about it where if you're smart about it, you can make out pretty good. And I've dabbled in that and have some experience with that. And I will say, if I didn't have the mindset that I did and wasn't as conservative, I probably would be in a bit of trouble. But yeah. But yeah, no, things are going really good. No, I'm really fortunate.
Yeah, these last 4 years have been pretty rough.
Yeah.
And hopefully.
Yeah, it's been ups and downs.
Hopefully we can regroup and probably about next year this time, hopefully things are getting back on.
Getting back to normal.
Get back to normal. And
yeah. But
then that's when all the work will be time to.
Oh, I know that there's going to be some sort of economic crisis coming. I know there is. It is historically. Any election year, they kind of build it up for it, and plus everything with inflation. Like, we're going to deal with some sort of economic crisis. So I'm kind of mindful of it and preparing for it and being conservative and kind of keeping expenses minimal. That way, if it does slow down, we're not
ride it out.
Yeah, ride it out, not spread so thin that it's like, we're in trouble. Because in that situation, it's not like, we'll just sell some stuff off.
Right. No.
You can't. No. Because no one's buying because everyone's doing the same thing. You can't sell anything off. The only thing you can do is let the bank have it again if you still owe on it, which that ain't good. But I guess if that's what you got to do to survive, so be it. But yeah.
Well,
you ready to wrap it up?
Yeah, it was good. Good having you over.
Yeah.
First going of this.
Yeah.
It was actually better than what I thought.
We'll see where it goes, man.
Hopefully, can get the following and
Oh yeah, I think it'll take off, man. I mean, get some good people in here, some interesting folks, and
Yeah.
have them tell their
Got
story.
that. I think I've got that.
Well, yeah, I was actually kind of surprised. I didn't think I was that cool or that interesting enough for a podcast. But thanks for thinking
Yeah.
I'm somewhat interesting, I guess.
Yeah, man.
Just
I like.
just another dumb mechanic.
Yeah.
That's about it.
I like the underdog stories.
Yeah, I do too. You know, seeing because I've heard other stories too, and I'm like, damn, like that's badass. Good for them.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, me, I never really, I don't really put myself on a pedestal at all. But when I think back on it, it's like, oh, kind of have had some curveballs in life thrown at me. Kind of dealt with some shit, but ended up making out all right on it.
Yeah,
but
just gotta keep going.
Well, and that's the thing is, I don't like to sit here and play woe is me because I know there's people out there that probably have it a lot worse than I do, and a lot worse of a situation. And then on the flip side of that, there's probably people out there that have it way better than I do. But it's just that's that's the life I got, and that's what's been thrown at me. Can't sit here and be envious or jealous of other people. Just it's what I've been dealt with, and gotta make it work.
Yeah.
Thankfully, it's worked out for the better for me.